All right, good day, everyone. Welcome to today's presentation, Not All USBs Are Created Equal, Three Key Things to Know, sponsored by Legrand. My name is Colleen Beatty, and I'm the senior editor here at Electrical Contractor Magazine. On behalf of Legrand and the magazine, I want to thank all of you for attending today's presentation. Now, before we get started, I just need to quickly go over some housekeeping items. First, please note that today's presentation is being recorded, and we'll be providing you with a link recording after the webinar is over. If you have to leave early, don't worry. You can come back anytime and watch the recording when it works for you. The audio for today's presentation should be coming through your computer speakers or headphones. If you have any technical difficulties, audio or otherwise, please reach out using the Q&A window on the bottom left of your screen. Now, of course, we can encourage your participation in today's webinar, so please send us your questions. You can submit them at any time during the presentation using the Q&A window, and we'll have time at the end of the webinar to answer those questions. There's also a quick survey that should pop up on your screen at the end of the webinar, and we really hope that you'll fill that out. It's very helpful to us. Or if you'd like to fill it out sooner, you can just click the icon with the clipboard at the bottom of your screen to pop it up. I'd also like to mention that we've begun offering a certificate of participation. You can claim yours near the end of the webinar in the module on the bottom right of your screen. Now, with that all out of the way, I'd like to welcome today's speaker, Rachel Rich from Legrand. Rachel is a senior product manager with Legrand, leading the residential pass and Seymour product line from Charlotte, North Carolina. With over 9 years in the electrical industry, Rachel has built expertise across product management, sales, and marketing analytics, giving her a well-rounded perspective on both the customer and the business. She earned her Bachelor of Science in Biology and Psychology with a minor in marketing from Lemoyne College, and she holds both her Project Management Professional and Product Management Certificate Level 5 credentials. Rachel is passionate about translating technical innovation into practical, user-focused solutions that make a real difference for electricians in the field. Welcome, Rachel.
Thank you very much for having me, and welcome to everyone on the line. We're going to start with a quick question just to get to know everyone on the line a little bit better, which is, when is the last time you upgraded your cell phone? So please take a minute to select one of the 4 options. This is a judgment-free zone. This will just help us with the session as we get further along when it comes to USB charging and why it matters.
Just give everybody a few more seconds. Go ahead and put your answers in.
All right, let's see what these results look like. So more than a year ago, within the last year, and within the last few months, and I can't remember. So a little over half of you right now are saying more than a year ago, and these numbers are going to keep rolling in. So in the next slide, let's talk about the need for USB outlets and why this is continuing to grow and it's not going to slow down. Think about how many devices in your home that need a USB port. In fact, in 2023, on average, household had 17 connected devices that use USB for charging, and that number is only going to grow. To drive this point home, major tech companies are estimating that by 2030, network-enabled devices, which are devices that connect to Verizon, AT&T, etc., will outnumber humans globally by a factor higher than 3 to 1. That's 29.4 billion devices when there aren't nearly that many people in the world, which will not include charging bricks as well. So I don't know if you noticed, but last time you updated your cell phone, you most likely did not have an adapter or a charging brick included with that device, which means we're going to have 29.4 billion devices and nowhere to plug them in. So this is a really important topic that we're living through an era of the most major technological development ever. Next question, which is the last one I promise, is just tell me where you're tuning in from today, because it does matter when it comes to USB charging. I'll give everyone a couple more minutes. We've got 10% of people that have answered. We've shot up to almost 17%. So we'll give you a couple more minutes or seconds. All right, we've got about half the answers in right now. So we'll flip to the next slide. And it shows a lot of Midwest. We have people from all over, Northeast, Pacific states, Southwest. So we've got a pretty good mix of people on the line right now. And I asked that question because there's a lot of legislation happening right now about USB ports, which we'll get into. But we're living through an era of the most technological boom and development we've ever seen. And a lot of us are still relying on Type A ports with the technology we have today that was introduced in 1996. Can any of you tell me a device you're still using today that requires USB charging that's from 1996? I hope none of you. And if you are, we'll start a GoFundMe, I promise. Type-C USB ports were introduced in 2014 because the needs of the tech we have today have changed. Even the width of a Type-A USB port is wider than a lot of the tech that's being sold on the market today. There's nowhere to plug it in. Also, with Type-A ports, I don't know if you've noticed, you only could plug it in one way. You have to flip it around for it actually to enter. And then we haven't even talked about the speed yet. Type-C ports, on the other hand, are smaller, which are able to fit on modern devices today. You could plug them in either side. You're not stuck with just plugging in on one side. And they're able to facilitate higher speeds as well as data at the same time. You know, the market is reacting to this change in technology and needs. In EU and large states like California have come out with legislation saying, hey, you know, all the devices sold in our region can only be used with a Type-C to C cord, because they want to reduce the amount of junk drawers and push the market to where technology is today. So if you're in the state of California, know that next time you buy a device, it isn't going to have a Type-A port, even if it's a cheap one-off product on Amazon. It has to have a C to C cord. So hopefully that'll help with your junk drawers in the future. And I know it definitely is going to help mine, even though almost all the devices I've recently bought have C to C cords. Since 2020, all the Apple devices and Android devices have shipped with C to C cords, just to give some perspective. So not all Type-Cs are created the same. And just because something's labeled fast does not mean it's the new power delivery technology behind USB charging. So those C ports that we saw are really important when it comes to having the right access. So imagine having a car, but no gas. That's what you have when you have a USB device that's not power delivery technology in today's world. If you just have a traditional fast charger, which is your 3.1 amp, 15 watts, it can't handle the tech on the market today. And you need to have the latest technology behind that port, which is called power delivery. So the next slide, I'll show all the devices my intern at the time went to his college campus and wrote down when he ran into. And it really surprised me to see what he came back with. I don't know what kids are doing nowadays, but he did write down a drone on the list, and I chose not to include that. But regardless, notice how high these wattage outputs are. I mean, the Bose sound speaker really surprised me at 60 watts. And I think the wireless headphones and smart watches, I didn't even realize they needed 15 watts. So all of the devices on this list today, unless it's 15 watts, requires power delivery technology in order to hit those speeds and those outputs. So it's not just having that C chord that matters now, but it's having the power behind that port to be able to give the device what it needs. I don't know if any of you have plugged in a device before and got a not enough power to charge warning sign before, or anything of the sorts, or you plugged into one port and you're like, wow, that charged really fast, but this one takes all day. I don't understand the why behind that. And most likely it's the difference between power delivery charging and not, and the speed tied to that power delivery charging. So next time you go to pick out a USB charger, which I'm sure you will with how many devices are coming into the market here soon, look for power delivery charging, which is a new technology behind the USB port. So it's a lot like cars. You've got your gas power car, which is your standard USB charging, and then you've got your e-cars, your electric cars, and completely different engines, but they look the same. That's what I want you to think of when you think of power delivery charging. It is able to give variable voltage outputs to give your device exactly what it needs when you plug it in. So if I plug in my cell phone, it's not going to overheat it versus when I plug in my laptop. So it's not going to undercharge my laptop and it's not going to overcharge my cell phone. Also, you want to look for intelligent thermal sensing, which is a fancy way of saying it's protecting your outlet from overheating, and as well as protecting your device from overheating. The biggest risk you can put your device through is charging, because your battery is at its most risk. So if you give your battery more heat and more power than it can handle, it's not going to allow your battery to last as long as the manufacturer says it should. So this is a really important feature to look for and to prioritize when selecting USB chargers. Next is GaN technology. This is one that most people haven't heard of, and it sounds really fancy when you say it, but this is a chip that we use in high voltage power delivery charging that reduces the heat in the device, as well as creates a more efficient charge. So when you're getting up to speeds like 60 watts and above, you want to make sure you have a GaN chip inside of that device. It should be advertised with the product, because it's a really big deal for USB charging, because I don't know if you've ever touched your charging brick or the outlet after you've charged, or when it's half an hour into charging and it feels warm. That's an issue for the charger over time. So that GaN technology chip reduces that heat and makes the charger and your device last longer. Also, additional features to look out for are tamper resistance. Nothing kills me more than going into a new family's home and seeing those little plugs in all the plugs, if you know what I'm talking about. They're little plastic pieces that cover up the outlets. Tamper-resistant shutters, as most of you are aware of, make it to where you can't stick a fork in the outlet like Tom and Jerry and hurt yourself. It's very important for children, and that's a feature you should definitely have when it comes to USB charging. Another one is UL listing, and make sure it's a valid UL listing number tied to that device. UL listing makes sure that the device is safe and it will not create any hazards in the home when it comes to you and your family's health, as well as your warranty on the job site. And lastly, what you should be looking for and why it matters is brand reputation. It's a brand that has lasted the test of time, that isn't going anywhere. It's not just marketing promises, but actual warranties that back up that product, and you know where to go and why if something were to go wrong. Next I have is how to spot a cheap imitation. And I think this is really the bulk of the presentation when it comes to trying to spot a USB. USBs it's hard to find one online because there's so many options and you're not sure what you're looking at. You Google it and all you see are the price points and the port types and then a speed on the box. Well, it's really important not to just stop and look at the speed in the box and call it good, because a lot of cheap imitations have gotten really smart when it comes to the way they advertise their USBs. They've designed their products to where they can plug in USB ports to all the ports at the same time and add up the speeds and advertise for that combined speed, but not what it's actually outputting per port. So for this example to the left, you've got a 12-watt power delivery output at the bottom and a 30-watt power delivery output at the top. But they're advertising 42 watts of speed. You're not receiving that speed. It's not rated right. You're actually receiving 30 watts at best. The next thing you should be looking for is dimensional non-compliance, because as we found in our USB labs, when you start to tear those devices apart, it gets a little bit seedier after that. You'll find that they don't fit NEMA conformed sizes, which means they don't fit in the box very easily. You might need a 22 cubic inch box to fit them. And then you start to peel back behind the plastic and you'll find, wow, their soldering points aren't consistent. There's sparking, there's this or that you really can't tell unless you're a manufacturer. But at the very least, you can tell if it's a NEMA enclosure box, which is usually a red flag for more issues to come. There's also high-pitched buzzing sounds that can come from off-brand USBs. The Hearing Health Foundation says 30 to 35 decibels will disrupt your sleep of noise, and 45 decibels will disturb your concentration and even from learning. So USB ports, regardless of their quality, when they're outputting a full load, which is the highest wattage they can output, you'll hear a slight noise. It's just a matter of how high the decibel is. Our decibels at Passam Seymour range around 22 decibels, which is much lower than what would disturb your sleep. And most people can't hear that range of decibel. And we're known for being the quietest USB port in the market. Well, the off-brands that we've tested and the cheap imitations we've tested in our lab are pushing 46 decibels, which is well beyond the disturbance of concentration as well as sleep disturbance. And that creates job callbacks, especially when it comes to hospitality builds or even sometimes school settings. And definitely if you install one of these next to a bed, because you're going to hear that little sound in the background and it'll drive you nuts, I promise. The last one that's an easy spot for looking for a cheap imitation is no certification marks or false marks on the device themselves. Sometimes people will like to overseas put things on Amazon that aren't actually listed and have what they need to be compliant. And you can always Google those certification UL numbers or whatever's tied to the device to confirm that, yes, this device is listed and it's safe to use. So there are a lot of speeds out there and it's really confusing. So beyond just being able to spot a cheap imitation and which port type combinations to use, let's talk about the speeds and where it's appropriate to put them. So a 65-watt power delivery wattage is the ideal speed to be putting in as many areas as you can because it will last the test of time. Our cell phones, as you saw, are outputting 30 watts, And even the speaker we saw was 60 watts. So in areas, when it comes to a residential location, you want to think about home office, living room areas, and even kitchen. In commercial settings, this is a big deal when it comes to offices, classrooms. We know for a fact that people will spend more time wherever they can charge a USB port, which means more money for some businesses like Starbucks. So anything you can think of where it sets up a home office location or a remote office location in coffee shops, these are great ideal locations as well. This matters because laptops, tablets, and phones can all charge off of that port type without getting that "I need more power" warning sign, which is a big deal. And then for your cell phones, you know, it's going to have plenty of room to grow into that speed, because as we integrate AI, additional functions as the years go on, you've got 35 watts of speed to grow into without having to change that port. The next wattage we recommend is 30 watts. And this is great for tablets and cell phones. So a lot of people put these next to their bed when it comes to residential areas or in the living room where you're going to spend some time. We highly recommend this in waiting room areas when it's hospitality, healthcare, and airport locations, because people are on the go. And this is a balanced power use for everyday use. So not everyone wants to plug in their laptop or a big heavy duty speaker. This is good for where we are today, where technology is. The next speed we recommend is actually not power delivery speed. So the other two would be power delivery, whereas this would be fast charging speed because it's 15 watts or below. We recommend a AC combination because there are still a handful of A ports out there in some regions for cheap wearables that you may find or high end. And these are meant for drop zones where something's going to be there for a while and it's only meant to charge something small. It's meant to be convenient and universal charging and overnight charging as well. So if you have Apple Watch, AirPods, or if you're even in the fitness arena and you've got one of the Gartner watches, this is what you want to charge that with. Not that it can't handle the higher wattages. It's always ideal to pick the highest wattage, but if you're just looking for exactly what these devices need, that's our recommendation. So our key takeaways when looking at USBs is don't just go off of the wattage advertised. Take the time to look at a per port output. If they don't clearly show that in their marketing, that's a huge red flag, and you better hit the hills running because I'm sure there's more underneath that hood than that. Power delivery is today's standard. Invest in it now or you'll have to replace it later. I'm already hearing on job sites callbacks due to, hey, I'm getting this weird message of my device not charging. It must be the device, or it must be the install, when it's really just choosing the wrong tool for the wrong job. You need to pick a car with gas in it to get anywhere, and you only have the car when you have a Type-C port without power delivery. Pick a brand reputation that's trustworthy. Don't just pick one that's a fly-by-night. There's a lot of those online, and you might get stuck with callbacks with high-pitched buzzing and not be able to lean on anyone for support. We also need wattages for modern devices. You saw what that chart looked like, from 15 watts for an Apple Watch to 65 watts for laptops and cell phones living in the middle. We can't keep picking A ports that were built in the 1990s because it's not giving the power you need. And lastly, you can always rely on Legrand USB receptacles. I'm here from Pass and Seymour Legrand, and we have all these bullets built into our devices. and they're built right and they're rated right. So we've all upgraded our devices, and it's time for our charging solutions to get caught up. Real power delivery isn't a luxury anymore. We keep talking about it as an upsell category when it's really the new baseline of how devices stay powered and homes stay powered. So if we keep installing 15-watt devices, eventually callbacks will occur. And we're trying to prevent that together and pick devices that match the speeds and requirements that all this new AI and apps require. And that's what this is. So I'll open it up for questions, and thank you.
Thank you so much, Rachel. That was such an insightful presentation. So if anyone would like to ask a question, you can go ahead and use the Q&A module. I'm going to highlight it on your screen for you, and in case you're not sure where it is. You can put in your questions now. Let's see. Got a few already in here. Is it true that you should not charge in public spaces such as airports due to potential data breaches? Is that something that Legrand is thinking about?
I'm so glad this question came up because I wish I could reach out to the FBI on USB ports because they made a lot of generalizations that just aren't true for USB ports. So yes, it's true. Type-C ports are able to transport power and data at the same time. The only time you need to worry about charging in a public space is when you're charging in a kiosk that's also attached to data, because they're able to take both by hijacking the chip and the USB. Our USB ports at Legrand are not capable of being hijacked, nor do they have the ability to be networked in any way. So you're okay to use ours in public spaces, and you should never hesitate when it's a Legrand device.
Okay, fantastic. And just a reminder to everyone that needs a certificate of participation, that should be available to you now or soon, depending on when you logged in. Let me highlight where you can find that. Once it's ready, there should be a little button in the module to download your certificate. Lots of good questions here. How many colors do Legrand's USB ports come in?
That's a great question. I have to count because we have so many. We're the only manufacturer that has, let's see here, we have designer outlets for USBs, we have decorator, and we also have healthcare and commercial. So there are so many colors across the board, but if we're only looking at our residential colors, I believe we have 9 colors. But if you want to include commercial, the sky's the limit because we even have the color purple.
I mean, that sounds a lot of fun.
I mean,
is there a quad USB-C outlet on the roadmap?
it is something we are considering, and it's something that's on my roadmap today. So stay tuned.
Okay. Got lots of great questions coming in, so I'm just looking. My cell phone specs recommend PPS charging. Will that be offered by Legrand? What are the consequences of using standard PD?
You know, that's a great question, and I don't think there are consequences when it comes to power delivery charging. PPS is an advanced fast charging technology that allows it to communicate in real time, whereas power delivery charging is the 3.0 standard. I think the benefits are faster charging for power efficiency and cooler charging, which is something we're working on with the GaN technology. And it is something you'll see once we get to higher wattages, such as 100 watts. Samsung is the only one that's using that type of charging that we're aware of, as well as Google Pixel. And it's still compatible with power delivery. It's just not as cool of a charging experience.
Okay. We have somebody asking, where is the certificate icon? It should be on the bottom right of your screen. Let me highlight that again. You should see a little glow around the module. Got some interesting installation questions. For retrofit applications, can USB devices be installed on locations that are lacking a ground?
They do. Well, it depends what speed. Power delivery, no. If it's non-power delivery, yes, because it's self-grounded devices. We highly recommend having a neutral wire that's grounding the device just because of how high the wattage outputs are nowadays. You want to keep that device as safe as possible because the variation of wattage up and down affects the battery life and experience for the device you're charging. And by having a ground wire, you're able to keep that consistent flow, and that's what power delivery specifically helps with. So that's why it's a requirement for power delivery.
Great to know. Here's another installation question. Are there any USB outlets that can be installed outside?
Yes, we are the only manufacturer in the market that has a GFCI weather-resistant USB device. And we also have additional weather-resistant devices, all of which need to be installed with an outdoor bubble cover, but they're great options for poolside and etc.
Okay. Does Legrand make USB outlets that can be used in commercial settings?
Yes, we do. We have the widest selection of USBs on the market today. Like I mentioned earlier, we have hospital grade devices, commercial grade devices, residential and luxury residential. And these speeds all go up to 65 watts in our offering, which is the fastest across the board. We're very proud of that.
Excellent. Got a lot of questions also about what Legrand is sort of planning for USB outlets. Is there plans for higher wattage USB to be produced, higher than 65 watts?
You know, with a GFCI combination device, that's a lot of chipsets inside of one little device. So when you think of 65 watts, I want you to think about the big charger that your laptop comes with. You know how it has that big brick right there on the end or in the middle of it? That's what it requires to be able to give you the 65 watts. That's what we're pulling off with two 65-watt ports inside of our outlet, which is a lot of juice if you think about it. So having the life savings of a GFCI chipset, which is thermal, and 65 watts, which is everything a laptop can do in a tiny little opening, is probably not going to happen yet, but it is something we aspire to get to, and we will be increasing those wattages, just not quite to 65 yet.
Fair enough. Another question about what's on your roadmap. Is there a USB GFI? I think they mean GFCI with a nightlight on the roadmap.
It's definitely something we've considered. I don't know if it'll be coming as fast as some of the other options we've talked about.
Okay. Until then, folks, there's, plug-in night lights.
We've got really nice night lights that pair with the Adorn if you want to do the 3 mod plus. They configured together, but as far as the decorator opening, we just would have to see if that's something the market wants.
Okay. This person noticed that the 65-watt USB-C unit has a little pinhole light next to the charging port. What should the user expect from that little light?
Very, very perceptive of you, because we didn't even talk about this. It's specific to Legrand. So for Legrand USB charging, we have power indication lights over each port. It's specific to us. We're the only manufacturer on the market that has it. And it's a little light that turns on only when the cord is plugged into a device. And if it's yellow, it's 90% charged and below. And if it's green, it means it's good to go, 90% charged or above. A lot of school teachers really love this feature because they're charging all the iPads for the kids and they can see across the room when they're done. And I know for myself, I'm a perpetual tapper of my cell phone to see where the the actual charging's at. So you could see when you're good to go with that little beacon.
That is so handy. I love that idea.
Thank you.
Here's a question. That you've been talking a lot about wall receptacles. Are there any corded units that plug in to have the charging ports on a tabletop?
Can you ask that question again? I'm trying to picture that.
Okay, you seem to be talking about wall receptacles. Does Legrand have any corded units? So I guess a cord and plug connected units that works with your existing outlets to have a charging port on a tabletop?
Yeah, we have a whole line of that. It's underneath our Wire Mold brand, and it's called our Desktop Power. They've got probably 5 different versions at this point, and I'm actually using one today on my desktop, and I plug into the cord end, and it's got a 65-watt power output, and we also have 30 and your standard 3.1 amp speeds. So we've got a full line offering for home offices, and we're also have a full line offering for hospitality builds, which is a huge seller for us.
Okay. Let's see. What are some common issues with USB outlets that electrical contractors should keep an eye out for when they're doing their installs?
Yeah, great question. Something that I encourage all of our installers to do, which is not something you'd think of until you leave the job site and you get that call back, is bring an iPad with you and plug in that USB port before you leave, because you'll hear the high-pitched buzzing before you leave, and I promise you, you'll hear from a homeowner, or they'll mention it at least to their family or whoever it is, as there's something wrong with the install, something wrong with the electrician, when it's truly just the product selected having a high decibel. And we're proud to have the quietest on the market, but that's something that does generate a lot of callbacks, especially for hospitality builds.
Sorry, I was muted. There was some fire alarms behind me. Were there any, excuse me, does Legrand have any plans for wireless charging outlets or devices? I know that's a little out of the realm of the topic of USBs, but it certainly seems pertinent.
Yeah, so we already have wireless devices today. We have our Cradle wireless charger that is wall mounted, and then our Wire Mold brand has little circles that you can cut into your desktop or desk areas, and it's a wireless charger. There are wireless charging pucks. So we do have a full line offering, and I do believe there are plans to come up with higher speeds for the wireless charging as well.
Awesome. I've got a couple more questions here. Do USB outlets need to be installed differently than other outlets?
Great question. They don't. I will say that our new devices, like our Power Delivery 65 watt, come with leaded devices. So that means the wire is poking out the back of the device, so you don't have to terminate around terminal screws. And it's a much easier install versus a standard device. That's about as much variation you'll get, though.
Okay. Looks like there's just one more question here. How can I tell if a USB outlet that I'm installing is fast enough for the application?
There are different apps you can use to show it when you plug in what the output is. I personally have a charging brick that I use that'll tell me how long it'll take to charge that brick, and that'll give me a pretty good gauge. But I think the best bet is to look at the specs on the device before you even get to the point where you're installing and having to plug it in. So look at that chart that we provided showing, in this application, I'm going to be using laptops or iPads or a range. You need to be in that 65 watt. Whereas if it's just a cell phone application, you need to be in 30-watt power delivery range. Anything smaller than that, obviously you can step down power requirements, but it's best to do your research before you get to the install.
All right, great to know. I don't see any more questions on the docket, so thank you everyone for your fantastic, insightful questions. On behalf of Electrical Contractor Magazine and Legrand, I want to thank you also for attending. And a big thank you to Rachel for such a fantastic presentation. Please don't forget to fill out the brief survey that's going to pop up at the end of the webinar. And please be on the lookout in your email for the recording of this event, which will be available soon. So if you'd like to come back and watch the webinar or share it with a friend, please go ahead. I hope everyone has a great rest of your day, and we hope to see you at a future